and this is probably a question for all of you, but what aspect in a script or an outline would make your heart leap with excitement? What would make your heart sink with, oh my God, that's going to be toil? What sort of things? Big battles? Is that great?
Battles are a bit like, it's all down to numbers, and then it's like hundreds of stunts. And I think also when it's, there's a lot of vis effects in it as well, which is quite hard. So, you know, you have to work with the stunts, you have to work with visual effects, it's so complicated, so you miss parts, you know, you leave parts of garments, and you just have to work really closely with them, and it just evolves. But that's why, you know, you have such a big crew.
I think the battles are difficult too, because they read really easily on the page.
Yeah, big battle.
Yeah, big battle.
Yeah.
So-and-so rides, and then that's it.
And they're not particularly designed.
It doesn't read well, but actually they're intensely detailed, aren't they?
Yeah.
And yet, when you think back,
certainly from Rob's point of view,
and when you think back to previous series, some of the battles have become, I don't know if it's a production thing, but they have become iconic. You think of, I don't know, Hard Home or the Battle of the Bastards. And so that, would that have been design-led, or was that in the script how that would look? Or a bit of both?
I think it's between probably the writers and the director of that particular episode.
I think, as that was directed by Miguel Sapochnik, I think he had a lot of massaging that he did to that to make it work the way he needed it to work. As I say on the page, it doesn't necessarily read as being as detailed as what it was. Yeah. And certainly for Rob, I mean, you find that they're much more work than they initially appear.
Yeah, just the amount of prosthetics and dummies and costume elements and armoury elements that we have to sort of go into. So yeah,
dead people, dead horses, mud.
Yeah, it sounds funny, but Game of Thrones, from a set deck perspective, you sort of think it's all going to be sort of nice cushions and drapes, and actually it's a lot of mud and dead bodies.
Do you have a warehouse somewhere full of dead bodies?
We've got
They're just littered around the back lawn.
We've got a huge amount of dead bodies.
Not only that, but dead horses.
Dead horses, dead bodies, and
dismembered bodies.
Dismembered bodies, and then this year we've got into
other stuff.
Other stuff. I won't go any further.
But with you, Rob and I have been saying that you won't be able to tell us from one of the dead bodies by the end. We'll just like go and lay on the dead bodies.
Why does Mummy look like a white walker?
Nobody will be able to tell the difference.
I always wanted to film my route to work, because there's the one corridor along the back of one of the Titanic studios, and you walk along, and there's been a dead body wrapped up, laying there, I would say, for the last 5 months. And I walked past it the other day, and there's suddenly, because the camera department putting the tent at one, what's this here for when I don't know? And they dragged it away, and it'd been laying there like for months and months.
But it definitely wasn't real. Did you check?
Well, I know, I didn't check. But
you have the slides of the Dragonstone audience hall, and I wondered whether we could ask you to what you were told to make and why you came up with what you did. But viewers will remember this, of course, it's from last season.
So this is the Dragonstone audience chamber's throne. There she is sitting on the throne. And this was drawn by the set decoration concept artist, Jess Sinclair.
Jess Sinclair, yeah, Jess concept.
And Jess has drawn a lot of our furniture and hand props over the last few seasons. And this was inspired by one of our locations called Zemaya Beach up in the Basque country of Spain, which has this incredible strata that sort of launches out of the water. And we didn't know a thing about it when we first visited the location, but once we got there we realised how special it was, and the fact that this strata almost reflected, you know, the backbone of a dragon, and that's when we realised that we had to incorporate it into the space.
And in terms of size, scale, and what that actually is, that's a set, is it?
That was built in Belfast in one of our stages there. We built it to 35 feet high, so an awful lot of it was, you know, the vast majority of shots were kept in camera, and it took up half of one of our stages. And the construction manager, Tom Martin, sent down a group of plasterers, and they actually took squeezes or imprints of this special strata.
The actual rock, right?
The actual rock, and then the plasterers were able to cast it back in Belfast so that it reflected that rock perfectly. And so what we saw on set was exactly the same patterns and design as what the real location was.
And what is the aesthetic that we're seeing here? What were you trying to say, as it were? How does this help the narrative, which I guess is the problem?
Dan and David were very interested in totalitarian spaces.
Yeah.
And they wanted Daenerys' homecoming to be obviously a very significant event for that character. It's something that she's been striving towards for a long time, so it needed to be worth her journey. All of that had to amount to something. And she had to sort of understand more about who she was, I guess, by walking into that space. And it was a very uncompromising, uneasy space to be in. And I think spoke a lot about the architecture of power and what that is. And it was almost designed, and the peculiar thing about it was it had been established as an exterior many seasons earlier.
Yeah, we'd seen the map room, hadn't we, as well?
You'd seen the map room and you'd seen a CGI representation of the exterior of the castle, so it was trying to weave it all together to be a coherent castle.
Yeah.
And originally it was designed as a series of caves, and so what I wanted was the building and that audience chamber to almost be like it was standing on its toes and sort of launching out of the rock, and hopefully that the audience chamber gives a bit of that feeling. And so she would enter through a cave and then come into the chamber that then sort of rose out to the sky.
And are you referencing any specific buildings or architects or...?
Not necessarily in that one. I was looking at various sort of brutalist architecture, but it wasn't, as in previous seasons, drawing on one architect in particular.